everyone. I wanted to present the second part of our self-esteem video. And just very, very briefly to recap, in the first part, we looked at two aspects that people have trouble with, the being and the doing. And we said that the being, you ask yourself, am I adequate, am I enough, and am I lovable? And the doing was, am I capable and am I competent? And as we said, most people struggle with the first. The first is really the most important. And a lot of times people actually focus on the second because they get an immediate gratification. So when you get that A in your course or you have some sort of achievement, it feels good. There's a feedback loop. But the first part in just being, people love you for who you are, not what you do. And that really is something that extends through the ages. So it's important to keep that in mind. So in this video, we want to look at how do you improve self-esteem. We talk about having a strong concept of self, which is really important. The second part of this is, okay, once you really know who you are, how do you start to improve your feelings about self? And so I look at the work of Nathaniel Branden for this, and he came up with what he calls the 6 pillars. And working a program with the 6 pillars is something that really you do over a lifetime. It may be something that you initially are working on pillar 1 and 3, and then you switch to pillar 2 and 4, and just doing an internal assessment of what you feel you need to work on. So the very first pillar of self-esteem, all the pillars start with the practice of, which is really important because it's something that we do have to practice. And the very first one is the practice of raising awareness. He calls it self-consciousness, I call it awareness. And there are 2 aspects of this. The internal awareness, who am I, what am I about, what's important in my life. And the second of these is external awareness. How am I perceived by other people? A lot of times people will say to me, well, I don't have any friends. And sometimes I will look into, do you have some sort of behavior that you're not aware of that might alienate people? So perhaps somebody constantly is interrupting and they're not aware that they're doing that. And that can be a distancing behavior for people. So the very first one is raising your level of awareness, internally and externally. How do you do that? Well, internally, we talk about meditation, we talk about prayer, journaling, reflection, and just sort of anything that can connect you to self and giving some thought to who you're about, what's important to you. The second is also to take a look at, maybe talk to some people that you feel would give you some honest feedback, a good friend, and maybe they would tell you. Now, one of the things that I learned about myself was that I don't smile enough, and I'm trying to work on that, and people said to me, you know, you look so serious all the time. Well, that's something I have to work on, because I don't want to be perceived as if I'm angry a lot of the time. It's just the face that I have. So anyway, that's an example for the first pillar. The second pillar is the hardest one, and that's the practice of self-acceptance. There are 3 levels to this, and the first level is you have to make a decision. A decision implies choice. And so the choice is, am I going to be for myself or against myself? And so the 2 areas you look at, if I'm going to be for myself, I'm going to refuse to self-talk or use self-talk in any way that demeans, devalues, or hurts me. And this is where that level of awareness comes in. How often do you make a mistake and call yourself stupid? Or, oh, I'm an idiot. Or say to yourself, if you flunk a test, I'll never succeed. You wouldn't look at a friend and say this. If a friend came to you and said, hey, I flunked this math test, you would not look at them and say, oh, well, you're a failure. But you will sometimes go into a negative self-talk that really can hurt your mood and affect your behavior. You know, you might choose not to study as much if you feel it's not going to make a difference. So the first part is making that decision. The second part is about being real, authentic, and genuine. Why is that important? Well, if I start trying to fake who I am and become very superficial around people, I begin to tell myself that who I really am isn't good enough, that people won't accept me, and I start to become a people pleaser, where I'm morphing myself constantly into trying to please the audience. And when I do that, on some level, I'm creating that feedback loop that I'm really not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not likable enough. So we try to live a life that's real, authentic, and genuine. And then the last is to bring the element of compassion into judgment. Judging oneself. We want to judge behavior. We have to discern if it's right or wrong, but judging the person, including self, is not going to be particularly helpful. How do you do that? You bring compassion in. So when you know something in terms of full context, a lot of times you are then able to understand, even if you don't agree, you could understand how someone might have that. So let's take a look. Let's say you see a drug addict out on the street and you make in your head, oh, look at that person, blah, blah, blah. Over time, if you were able to hear that person's story and find out that their parent was a drug addict, that their father abandoned the family, that they've struggled their whole life, that they had a marriage that did not work out and were severely abused, you might understand, even though you don't condone the behavior, you might understand better why that person is struggling with the issue they're struggling with. So maybe when you take a look at your own life, you can begin to reflect back and say, why might I be the way that I am? And can I bring that element of compassion and understanding as opposed to judgment? So those are the first two, and then the next video that we do, we're going to tackle a couple more of these. I hope this is helpful to you, and I look forward to talking to you then. If you find these videos helpful, please subscribe to my video channel, and certainly feel free to leave feedback. Thank you so much.